guys, welcome back. This is going to be the third one where we're looking at solving equations. This time we're going to look at solving two-step equations, again, still using our fractions. So we have our rules. Go ahead, you can scream and get it out because you're tired of seeing the same rules. Stay with me. First thing you need to do is keep it balanced. Second thing you need to do is isolate your variable. I'm glad you know those now. So we want to, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. Our goal is to get the variable by itself. Our other note that I'm going to give you at the bottom of this one is to remember, when we're undoing operations, we have to undo them in the opposite order of our order of operations. So our inverse order. So remember, the first thing we're going to undo is addition or subtraction, then multiplication or division, then exponents and parentheses. Now, we don't hit these higher ones so much in ours, but you will eventually. I think later in the year we might get into multi-step problems where you might have to deal with some of those things, all right? But for now, basically we're going to be just dealing with those first two levels. But just remember the way that we have to do them is the inverse order that we would actually do the operation. So I have a few examples for you. We'll take a look at. All right, so you'll notice that we are adding and subtracting here. The nice thing about here I'm doing multiplication and addition. I need to undo the addition first. What you'll notice is my addition is with whole numbers, so I don't need to worry about a common denominator right now. So let's just undo my addition. So I'm going to undo my addition by subtracting. So I'm just left with 1/4 times c on this side. Over here, 21 minus 5 leaves me with 16. Now remember, when we're undoing multiplication, we can divide by 1/4, or we can skip the step of rewriting that and save ourselves the time by multiplying by the inverse, which is 4 over 1 or 4. Remember, anything written over itself is a whole number. So we're multiplying by 4, multiplying both sides by 4, and for the sake of time, I'm just going to use the calculator. 16 times 4 is 64. So my answer is 64. And especially on two-step problems like this, I really encourage you to go back, plug the number in, and check, because two-step equations can be easy to make mistakes on. So you definitely want to go back and check that you're right. So we can plug our number back in. 1/4 times 64 plus 5. And I will do that in the calculator for you. So 64 times 1/4 plus 5 gives me 21. My answer checked. We are correct. We know that we're right. We must have undone it properly. All right, over here, here I notice now I have fractions. So now I want to rewrite them so that I have a common denominator here. So I'm going to rewrite my 1/2 as 2/4 since everything else is in fourths. And now the temptation here is to try and combine these two terms on this side, but you'll notice they're not like terms. I have 2/4, which is a constant, and I have 3/4 s. They don't both have s's. We can't combine those. We need to undo it to solve the equation, all right? So don't fall into that trap. So I have addition. I'm going to undo it by subtracting 2/4 from both sides. Just make sure that it's staying balanced. 2 3/4 minus 2/4 leaves me with 2 and 1/4. All right, now we're going to undo our multiplication. We're going to do that by multiplying the inverse. So I'm going to multiply by 4/3. Now, what you want to remember here, I have a mixed number. Remember, when we're multiplying, we absolutely have to change that into an improper fraction, or we're going to wind up with a crazy number. So I'm going to rewrite this. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. 9/4 times 4/3. I notice that there's a lot of canceling that can happen here, so I'm going to do that. 4 goes into 4 once, so I've got the 2 4s, they cancel. 3 goes into 3 once, and it's 9 3 times. So what I'm going to wind up with on this side, this canceled out. I'm left with s. Over here, I wound up with 3. All right? So just remember to take it step by step and make sure you're writing out your steps properly, and then always go back, plug it in, and check your answer. All right? I've just got 2 more that we'll go over. And again, remember, if I'm moving kind of fast, that's why there's a pause button. We love it. Okay, so here we have a variable a over 3. Don't let that confuse you. It's written like a fraction, and when you see it with all these other fractions, sometimes that just kind of blows your mind. All I'm saying here is a divided by 3, then I want to add 7/2. So we're just going to go out undoing it the same way we've been doing it. So the first thing I want to undo is my addition. Now I notice these are both in halves, so we're golden. So on this side, I'm just left with a divided by 3. Over here, I have negative 16 and 1/2 minus 7/2. So I'm going to rewrite that as adding my additive inverse so that I don't confuse myself. All right, now I'm adding two numbers that have the same sign, so I'm going to add them together and keep that negative sign. So 7/2 plus 1/2 would give me 8/2. 8/2 is actually 4. 16 and 4 is 20. All right? So the first thing we want to do is add our fractions, then we add our whole numbers. And since our fractions created a whole number, we're golden. What you'll notice is the 7/2. We could have rewritten it as a mixed number, but we don't have to. All right? So here I now have a whole number. I have a divided by 3. How do I undo division? I undo that by multiplying. So I'm left with a on this side. Negative 20 times 3 is negative 60. And again, always go back, plug it back in, check your answer. Okay. Over here, again, it can look confusing because I have a over 2, so it looks like I have a fraction minus a fraction, but that's not what we're doing. I have a divided by 2 is how I'm going to read this, minus 1/2 is equal to negative 6 3/8. So the first thing I want to undo is my subtraction here. But what I notice is that I don't have a common denominator. So I'm going to rewrite that with a common denominator. I'm not going to change a divided by 2 because that's a separate step. We're going to undo that with multiplication, so that doesn't need to change its denominator. Okay, that will just confuse you further. This I'm going to rewrite as 8. 1/2 is 4/8. Now I'm going to undo my subtraction by adding 4/8 to both sides. So on this side, I'm left with a over 2. Now over here, you'll notice this goes back to our rules for adding and subtracting positive and negative integers, or in this case, fractions. Here, I'm adding together two fractions that have different signs, which means I'm actually going to wind up subtracting their absolute values. So this is one where I'm going to subtract their absolute values. But what you don't want to get confused on, I have 6 3/8 minus 4/8. Well, I can't take 4/8 away from 3/8. So what we're going to do is we're going to borrow. I showed you how to do that. So I'm going to make 6 5, and I'm going to take away that one whole. I'm going to make it a fraction. Now, my denominators are in eighths, so I'm going to keep it as 8/8. I have 8/8 plus another 3/8, which means I have 5 and 11/8. Now I can subtract my 4/8 from 11/8, and I find I'm going to wind up with 5 and 7/8. And then remember, we go back, our larger absolute value was the 6 3/8, that was negative, our answer is negative. All right, so now I have a divided by 2 is equal to negative 5 and 7/8. Now I want to get my, undo my division. I'm going to undo that by multiplying. So I'm left with a over here. Remember, if we're multiplying, we want to make it into a mixed number, or not a mixed number, an improper fraction to multiply. So here I'm going to wind up with negative 47/8 times 2. And 2 and 8 can cancel down, so I'm going to wind up with negative 47 over 4. And again, feel free to leave that in the improper form. You don't need to flip it back. And definitely here in this one, I would go back and check your work just to make sure that you are indeed correct. Again, if you have any questions, go back. You can watch any of the old videos that'll help you with these concepts. You can post your questions in the comments. You can email them to me. You can ask in class, and I will go over that with you. You guys have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow.